Hey everybody, welcome back to Learning to Program using the Godot game programming engine. In this video, this is part 2 of the race car game. We're going to try and finish it up. I may do a bonus video to do a little bit better driving physics, but this video we're going to add a second player and add a goal line that will count score as the players pass through it. So let's get started. To do this, we're going to take our car scene. Let's see. First, let's add the second player. So to do that, we're going to use the input map here. So if you go under Projects and then Settings and then Input Map, all these actions are in here by default. And actually, these are where I was testing. So this is what we're going to create. I'll just leave these and you can see how they're made. So I'm going to add player 1s. So to add a new one, you say player 1 and then we'll do right. Player 1 left, player 1 go. Alright, so now I've got these three actions, but there's no keys associated to them. So these are the ones I already added for player 2, so let's go ahead and add these for player 1. So the right button, we're going to make it the right key. So you pick key here, and then you press the key that you want to add. So there I've added key left, and here I'll add key up. Alright, so I've got AWD for my player 2, and I've got the arrow keys for my player 1. Alright, so in your case you would not have the player 2 already there, so you'd have to add those as well. But by default, Godot does have all these other ones, these UE accept, UI select, and that's how we're able to use the spacebar and stuff in some of our other games. Alright, so now you've got your input map set up. So now let's set up our car to handle that. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to add a variable to my car, an export variable, so that I can determine who the driver of this car is. So let's do export, let's see, var player number. And by default, I'll just set it to 1. So that'll be player 1. Now, by doing this, if you go back to the car here and you click on it, you'll see up at the top, I actually didn't want to name it that. It doesn't matter, but this is a better, the preferred naming system for Godot. So if I click on my car node here in my track scene, I notice this is a car scene by itself, and it now shows up there. I don't want to change it here. I want to change it back here on my track after I've added it into my scene. So now I have the player number right here. So I'm going to duplicate this car, add a second car right alongside of it. So this is car 2, but it's still set to player number 1 because that's the default. Now I could change this to 2 here, and that would be fine, but I'm going to show you a little trick with these export variables. You can actually define what type it expects and then give it some predefined values. Right? So there I'm saying 1 and 2 are options and that it's of type string. So now if I go back here and look, I have a drop down and I can only pick those two. So this way I won't break my code on accident by typing an invalid number in there. Alright, so I've got 1 and 2 for my player number here. So this car is player 1, this car is player 2. So now I can tell with code which car is driving, but I can use the same code to drive both cars. Alright, so all of these currently are hard-coded for a specific key, so I'm looking for a key pressed. Well, I'm going to change these to action pressed. Okay? So I'm going to change each one of those to action pressed. But they're red because they're not expecting this number, they're expecting a string. So they're expecting something like player 1, what was this, right? So this is what they're expecting. So we're going to build a string to give them what they're expecting based on the player number that's currently driving. So to do that, I'm going to say var player string, I'll just call it player str, equals, and this will be player plus then the player number. Now because I made this a string up here, I don't need to convert it to a string, but if I had made this an integer, I would have to convert it to a string right there in order to concatenate it with this player over here. And I have this little underscore right there, so I need to add that. So I'm going to add that. Now, this right part is going to change depending on which action is being pressed, so I'm not going to add that. So what I'm going to do is delete that part and just say player str plus right. And then this one will be player str plus left. And this one will be player str plus go. Alright, so now let's give it a try, see what happens. So I'm going to play this, and I'm going to push my arrow keys, and I'm driving this car. Now I'm going to press the WSD cards, or buttons. Now I'm driving this car. So now I can drive both cars at the same time. It's kind of hard to do by yourself. But I'm able to have two different players playing using the same code. And it was really only a couple changes and one new line of code. So that's an extremely powerful, and it's really neat that we can use this ability to concatenate these strings together to get that to work. Alright, so the next thing I want to do is I want to make these cars different colors. So right now I've got two blue cars, but I'd like to have one of them be green. Now there's a cool feature of Godot where I can right click on these are two scenes, so I wouldn't expect that I could change something about the scenes. Now I could make another one of these export variables, set it to which color I wanted it, and then on the player startup, on the script startup, in a ready function, I could look at that variable and then change the texture based on that. So that would be one option, but this is an easier option. What I can do is right click on my car, come down here, and there's an editable children feature. Now normally when I have a subscene like this, I can't see the children, but in this case when you enable that option, you can. And what specifically I can do is I can click on the sprite of that subcar scene and drag in a different sprite. And there we go. Now I've got a green car. So when I play this, now I'll have two different color cars to drive. Alright, so now we've added a second player. Now the only thing we need to do is add a goal. So now we're going to switch modes and start adding our goal. I could add it as a separate scene here and then add it to my track, but I'm just going to go ahead and add it here, and that means I need to be careful about how I'm going to use an area 2D. I need to be careful about my positioning. So my area 2D is up here, but I'm going to be scoring it here. So let's go ahead and add a sprite because I need to be able to see it. I also need a collision shape. I have them right there. Alright, so I've got this. Let me lock that. I also want to drag this barrier in. And now you can see the barrier up here. I'm going to drag this, and because I locked it, I'm able to move all three together nicely. So I'm going to drag that about right there. And then for my collision shape, I'm going to make sure and set this to a box. Or rectangle shape. And then I'll come down here and I'll stretch this guy out. Now, in this case, I'm going to use my arrow keys so I can reposition this, and I want to just kind of position this down at the bottom because I want the cars to feel like they're getting scored as they go under the track. Now, this doesn't necessarily even have to be on the picture, but I'm just going to put it about right there. Alright, so now I've got a area 2D, so this guy should be able to detect when things enter it. So what I'm going to do is add a new script here. I'm going to attach a script, just leave all the defaults. Actually, I need to change the name of this to goal area 2D, and then let's attach a script, and so that I'll set my name to goal area 2D. Alright, so now I've got this guy. I'm going to delete all this because I don't need it. But what I do want to do is set up a signal. So I'm going to go up to node, area 2D, because this is an area 2D node. That means it has this body entered signal. I'm going to double click that, make sure I click on my goal because this is where I want to put this event, and connect. So now this is the code that will be triggered when a car or anything passes underneath that goal. So here I need to do, the first thing I need to do is make sure that a car is what's driving into the goal. So if we print body.name and then play, I should get a message down here. So static body 2D, so this goal is hitting the track, and that's why that printed. If I drive my car under there, car drives in there, and if I drive the other car in there, car 2 drives in there. So I could use this to detect which car is to score. I could do car 1 and car 2, but I'm going to use I'm going to use the property that we already set on here. Remember, we set up this player number. I'm going to use that. But first I need to make sure that I'm scoring a car and not the track. So I'm going to go up to groups, and I'm going to add a race. Actually, I don't even want to do it here. I want to go into the car scene itself. I want to add it right here. So I'm going to add a race car group and save that scene. Now if I go back to my track and click on these two guys, I can see that both of them are in this group. If I click up here on my tile map, he's not in that group. Both cars are in that group because they both come from the same scene. Alright, so now in my code for the goal, I should be able to detect if it's a car. So if I can say if body.isInGroup race car, make sure that casing is correct, and now I'll print it. So now if I test this, I should not get a message. There's no message about it colliding with the background or the track, but if my car drives in, I do get the message. Alright, so next I want to check for that player number. So to do that, I'm going to say body dot, and remember we called it player underscore number, and I can go to my car script and see it right here. So that's what I'm getting. Now when I add these variables up here at the top, not the ones inside of a function, but the ones up at the top, I can access them this way by accessing the object. So this is my car reference right there, and then the property, and that would be this player number. Alright, so print player number. Let's see what that does. So now if I drive my first car, I get 1, and if I drive the second car, I get 2. Excellent. So now I can tell which car I need to score. So now I need to I need to keep score. So let's add two variables, one for player 1, score equals 0, player 2, score equals 0. And now what I can do is print. Got my print for the player number, so I can say if body.player number equals 1, so that's the first player, then I say player 1 score equals player 1 score plus 1. Alright, so now what this should do is if the player 1 goes under the scoreboard, under the goal line, then I'll take that score and set it to that score plus 1. Alright, and we're going to do that for player 2. Body.player number equals 2, then player 2 score equals player 2 score plus 1. Alright, so now this should keep track, or keep score. However, we don't have any way to see the score yet, so let's go ahead and add the ability to see the score. So I'm going to add to this goal area or goal post, I'm going to add a a canvas layer. This will let me draw labels on top of it that we can see. And then now I'm going to do a label. And you can remember this back from when we did the some of our first games. Like guess my number. Oop, I didn't mean to do that. So that's on because of this. I'm not able to move some of these sub elements. So let me turn that off for a second and move that over here. So I'm going to change a few properties about this. So first I'm going to set some text so we can see it. Player 1 score. And I'm just going to say 0 for now. And I want to boost this up in size because it's a little small, so I'm going to go to, is it rect? No. Oh, no. Let's see. I think it was rect. Scale. Here we go. Underneath the rectangle, there's the scale. I'm going to set it to 2. 2. There we go. That looks pretty good. And so you can put this in the center, I guess, or over here, whichever you like. And I'm going to duplicate this. I'm actually going to label this to be player 1 label, or label. Yeah, let's do player 1 label. There we go. Now I'm going to duplicate this and then take the second one and scoot it down below. That way I keep all those properties I set, like the scale and the text. Now the text I'm going to change to player 2 score, and over here I'm going to change this to player 2 label. Okay? Now I need to go back into my code, my goal code, and add the ability to see the updates. So right here, I know that my score has changed if I get into this. So if I hit a body, I know, or if my body is in the group race car, I know that one of them has been hit, and therefore my score needs to go up. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to call a function called update labels, or update scores. Okay, and then I'm going to create that function. So func update scores, and here's where I'm going to update those scores. So I have the scores up here, and what I need to do is get this score into this label. Okay, so to do that, all I need to do is use either my $sign or the get node, and then select that label. And the reason I put my canvas here instead of out here is it makes this easier. So there's my label 1, and I'm going to set the text of it to player 1 score, and then add my score. Now the score is a number, so I need to convert it. So I'm going to go str player 1 score. Now I know that's really long, but all we've really done here is created the kind of prefix text of player 1 score, and then we've converted that number to a string so that we can append it on here, so that the whole thing will say player 1 score, 1 or 2 or 3 right there. Okay, and then we've set that into the text of our label for the right here. Alright, so now I'm going to do the same thing for the second player, and so I need to change the player 2 here, player 2 here, and player 2 there. And that should do it. So let's give it a try. When I start out, I get a 1, and if I make a lap all the way around, hopefully I should get to 2. And while that's going, I'll drive the second car into there and see that his score went up. So let me navigate my car around here, and we'll get a second score. Hopefully that'll go up to 2, and it does. Alright, so this is kind of where we're going to leave the game. I just kind of wanted to show how easy it is to do something like this. Now there's a lot of little issues with this. So one, cars don't normally drive where they can turn around like that, so that might be something you want to fix. Also, you can go backwards through the score, so a clever person would just rack up a big score by just driving around in circles around the racetrack. Now that might not be too bad to fix. You could add a second one here to subtract a score if they go backwards. There's all kinds of ways you could fix that. You could also put one over here, a collision area over here, to say, hey, you've got to drive through this one before you can come back through this one. Lots of options, and those are fun for you to figure out. Alright, I hope you enjoy, and I'll see you next time.